Sorry. Thank you so much because I completely forgot. Um, but we will be talking about advocacy opportunities as well as local foods in the Farm Bill. So, I always like to do a quick slide. If you are, for some reason, not familiar with what the Farm Bill is, the Farm Bill is quite literally our biggest piece of legislation that Congress passes Congress passes besides our budget, and it is renewed every 5 years. It came out of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl through the New Deal. The last farm bill was passed in 2018. We were supposed to have a new farm bill in 2023. That did not happen, and now we have been working on or through a continuing resolution with a farm bill. So hopefully we will get a new farm bill in 2026, just 3 years, a little bit behind. So I wanted to lift up, like I said, we're going to be talking a lot about not only local food systems, but how to be able to advocate through that into these different kinds of programs and through CFA. CFA is 40 years old this year. We got started in 1985 when tobacco a group of tobacco farmers came together and um, decided that the problem actually was not them, even though a lot of people try to tell them that. It was actually with public policy, and they came around to make changes for that. So since 1985, CFA has contributed to 7 farm bills. Since 2023, we've taken about 10 trips to DC. We've hosted over a dozen trainings. We've held at least 4 in-person events, but also presenting at different events and things like that. Um, all right. Um, Myrisa, I have a child that's calling me from a phone. Give me 1 second.
All right. Yeah, I can take over for a second. This is, if you look at the ag census, you can understand. Well, so first of all, the national ag census is not always, if you're looking at most of CFA's members, it's not always the most accurate thing because a lot of times small farmers won't take it, or even larger farmers. But we know from the 2022 ag census that, farm direct to consumer sales are increasing, like nationwide, that's 3.26 billion. Um, and as far as those who put it in 2022, and then there are fewer farms. And this is something that Kimmie and I were talking about earlier. And, you can see their percent of farms with direct sales by sales revenue. So like the amount of sales they have total, like did they have less than 5,000? They go in that like second from the right one there, or if they had more, so how Kimmy and I were talking about how if you have a sector that is increasing by 16%, how are we losing farms? And the answer is most of the people who are doing these direct to consumer sales are very small. We're losing more and more farms because fewer people are continuing to farm, farmlands being used for other uses. You say like, oh, 3.2 billion is a lot, but if you look Kentucky alone in 2024, I think probably according to UK closed ag receipts somewhere around $7.9 billion. So Kentucky could make up, does alone agriculturally does more than half or more than twice as much as what direct consumer sales does nationally. So if you're wondering, like, oh, I know these people who got a new farm and they registered a farm number, that's why. So one of the things that we have noticed, one of the reasons CFA features a lot of the direct to consumer stuff is because that is where you see newer farmers, what I call transgenerational farmers, people who skipped a generation or don't have a background in farming. That's the entry point that a lot of them do because it is cheaper than buying all the equipment to, raise soybeans. I don't know, or, purchase either purchase or lease 1,000 acres, right? So a lot of people get into farming with direct to consumer sales. So I'll let you take it. Are you good, Kimmie?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm okay. Um, you have kids that call you in the middle of the day and why, he has no reason to want to try and come home, so he's okay. Um, Marissa touched a little bit on the local food systems in the US as like a whole, but looking at um, the Kentucky food system specifically, um, and she talked a little bit about direct to consumer sales, and that is growing pretty big, pretty well for Kentucky farms and in our counties. And the 2022 Ag Census showed us that 72 counties out of the 120 counties experienced a pretty big increase. And I've listed here the counties with the biggest increases. So we have Magoffin, Warren, Christian, Davies, and Simpson counties. And a lot of this is due to different avenues of direct to consumer sales that don't include just farmers markets. So we have farm stands, CSAs, and even, online sales that farmers are utilizing nowadays. So when it comes to farmers markets, that is something that has been super detrimental to a lot of our small scale farmers, and has continued to grow over at least this last decade, especially um, really started booming during COVID in 2020. And um, some of the biggest growth that we've seen just on the US level, and we'll talk a little bit about Kentucky, but is our SNAP growth. So a lot of SNAP users are going to farmers markets. You can see that the increase is like 431% of SNAP users have spent dollars at their markets. Um, and then another noted thing that I think is really good is how many people are going to their farmers market and purchasing things at least once a year, because we know farmers markets are seasonal, even though more and more are becoming year round. Um, but that, and with that growth, a lot of markets are popping up, and that helps our farmers not have to drive as far. So a lot of farmers are uh, staying closer and near and not having to drive over 50 miles somewhere. So in Kentucky, the most recent numbers from 2022 have showed that uh, Kentucky farmers markets, they reported about $15 million in sales. I like these graphs about the age range that are visiting farmers markets and what they typically buy and how many purchases, because we do have different programs that include people on SNAP, but also senior programs. And we can see here that our seniors, people over the age of 65, they buy quite a bit at farmers markets. Um, and then millennials also like to go to the farmers markets, very hip for us. So since COVID, since 2022, it has continued to grow, and it has become a super vital part in, I think, our local food systems here in Kentucky. And through the programs at CFA um, that we implement through our organization to help farmers markets, we have seen really true impacts to our local economies. Um, and that is through Kentucky Double Dollars, our farmers market resiliency programs, and things like that. So hopefully continue to grow to make that impact.
So Kimmie's going to let me babble for approximately 13 slides about local foods in the Farm Bill. And what occurs to me as someone writes, I'm from Louisiana Farm to Schools, I didn't actually put Patrick Leahy in there because it's under a different title. It's under Title 4 and the nutrition title, which is unusual for most of the programs that are actually designed to help farmers, because most of those are somewhere in crop insurance, conservation, or horticulture. But at any rate, the Seniors Farmers Market Nutrition Program I actually think is under Title 4 too. But the ones that we have known really well in Kentucky, and kids will kid. No. Oh. So I have twin 7-year-olds. My apologies. Um, so anyway, on that note, the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program is one that both CFA and other entities in Kentucky have used, and it's one that we will continue to see the benefits of, because I don't think we would have seen the growth of SNAP at farmers markets in Kentucky or other places without that program, because it does allow us and others, not just us, we're not the only ones, to double SNAP dollars for healthy fruits and vegetables. And that's a real easy sell at farmers market. Um, the hard part is getting farmers markets to accept SNAP. You also have the prescription produce programs, like we have our Fresh Rocks for Moms. We've seen other people do everything from cancer-related nutrition programs to blood pressure and type 2 diabetes. So there's lots of different, not necessarily in the state, but we've seen a lot of those, and it's very important. Now, if you're thinking about the Seniors Farmers Market Nutrition Program, let me tell you what, this, you wouldn't think about it, but this is something that actually comes up a lot, because only fruits and vegetables or specialty crops are eligible for Seniors Farmers Market Nutrition Program. And so I've had a couple of farmers who have said, I really wish that meat was eligible. And it's not. This is actually distributed from the federal government to the state, and then goes to the state level across to the farmers markets. So we actually have a separate program funded by the state that we double those dollars. There's, people have made the pharmacy program out of that. There's lots of different things. So LAMP is one of my favorite pieces of the Farm Bill. So LAMP actually is the Local Agricultural Marketing Program, and the reason that it was created, because there were two separate programs that were each in the Farm Bill but didn't have enough funding to reach a mandatory funding level, and those were the broadly called the Local Food Promotion Program, which now encompasses the Local Food Promotion Program, the Farmers Market Promotion Program, and the Regional Food System Partnerships Program, or as I like to call them, the Ps. This is all the P programs. The other one is one that I have worked with several farmers in our state and have had partners across the United States do the Value Added Producer Grant Program. That doesn't just mean turning milk into cheese, although that's one of my favorites. It could also mean adding value by raising it organically, by having heirloom, by selling it locally, so you've increased the price point because you're bringing more value back to the farm. There's lots of different ways. So that one is a really special grant program, because it's one of the very few places that you see individual producers applying for up to $250,000, up to $250K, depending on the year and their Farm Bill language. But between $200,000 and $250,000 to be able to access and get them over a farm business hump. Like if you need more people to help you process your cheese, or you need better software to help customize your CSAs, or it can't be production related. And that's going to be the theme of a lot of this stuff, is it's not production related. From the local food and the farmers market, it can't be production related. Those are all about building markets for farmers. And so it's very much business oriented, not farm technique oriented or feeding people oriented. And so that's the reason those are under the horticulture Title 10 in the Farm Bill. And I'm happy to answer questions about any of these, but we can do the next one. By putting them together, by the way, they made mandatory funding, which is really weird because they actually crossed it over two different USDA agencies, and the applications have nothing in common. They're just in the Farm Bill together now. The Farmers Market Promotion Program, that's one of the big ones in that. It usually has, right now, it has 30 million a year as long as they keep making continuing resolutions. Um, so its its whole goal is to increase direct marketed products. So if you think about it, and Kimmie was talking about those really big numbers, so the increase of direct marketed things in for farms in Kentucky, like you see that like 400% increase in McGoffin County or whatever it was. A lot of that is because of things like farmers markets and supporting farmers markets. So for example, CFA had the Farmers Market Resiliency Program and the Farmers Market Support Program, and those specifically helped try to strengthen the farmers markets. We've had other folks, we have a partner right now, K-Card, that has a farmers market promotion program that is specifically to help those farmers be able to sell not just at farmers markets, but strengthen it enough they can go into schools or other direct marketed things. Oak, their CSA, their employee voucher CSA market started with a local food and a farmers market promotion program. And we see individual farmers markets has happened a few times that they have had individual applications for capacity building. That has actually gotten harder because one of the things that happened to this over time is that they made the funding pot bigger, and AMS was like, hey, we can't deal with tiny farmers markets all applying for this because we're going to have like a bazillion more grantees. Let's just say instead of getting $100,000, you can have $500,000, and your metrics are how many farmers you can impact. And so you saw more universities and things applying for that. Some of that was statutory, some of that was rules making because the Farm Bill is statutory, and then people make rules. So next slide. Local food promotion program. So this is, farmers market promotion program is not just about farmers market. It's any direct to consumer sales. So you're talking about CSAs and stuff too. With the local food promotion program, you're really looking at where there's a third party, someone else who's buying it and aggregating it and somehow getting it to a consumer. So what you see there is, we've seen value chain coordinators through that who are trying to like help develop those farmer buyer relationships, or worked on regional food businesses. I think we've had some distribution partners in Kentucky that have had that, and it's a lot about trying to both, there's two pieces, like it's not just money for them to, but one, you can't build anything with it, and you can't buy anything you can really keep with it. So like no vehicles. So don't think like, oh, what chefs wants building warehouses and buying trucks. No, not allowed to do that. What they are allowed to do is hire a person who goes around, and I don't know what their application was in the past, to be like to go and specifically work with farmers to try to help get farmers into the distribution chain while developing markets for those farmers to go into. You have planning grants, which is like, how are we going to do that? The implementation, which is we've already made the plan, we know what we're doing. You don't have to have one before the other. And then farm to institution, which you're looking at some of the work that we see in Kentucky with value chain coordinators, where you're helping get people into some sort of institution in the state. And what that institution means, a hospital, healthcare, schools, university, somebody who's going to serve a lot of meals every day, right? Justice system, all of that. So, yep, Locals Food Hub had a grocery box that they actually did for an LFPP, and it won't pay for buying the food, but it paid for some, I think, I don't remember the specifics of the grant, some of the boxes, but really the time and effort required to coordinate buying a entirely local box of groceries, right? And some of the distribution and marketing for all of those things. We've seen them that did water quality testing. I see Hort Council's post-harvest and waste reduction, preparing farmers for new markets. Again, this won't pay for production needs, but it will pay. So this was interesting. I once saw one pay to help an aggregator developed a program to help certain types of livestock be raised to specifications so they could enter a new market. So they went around and helped farmers reach those the quality goals, the certification goals that were necessary.
I
So
have a question, Marissa, that
yeah,
so for these programs, we have mentioned quite a bit that they don't necessarily help production, like the farmer's production side or the cost associated with that. So who typically acquires these funds, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So do these, who typically applies for these kinds of funds, or do farmers apply for them and use them in that way?
I have seen some individual farmers get these funds. It's been few and far between, especially since this went through the same evolution that the Farmers Market Promotion Program did, where they increased the size of the pot, but they didn't want to have to deal with having more grantees. So they increased the size of the pie, and instead of being like, look, everybody gets more slices, they were like, but we want the same number of slices.
Yeah.
And that effectively, in my opinion, in my professional opinion, I don't mean just personally, I mean in my professional opinion, that effectively took out a lot of farmers being able to do this and aggregate and made them less competitive because now they're competing with universities or nonprofits. They're competing with the CFA, a UK, a KSU, right?
Yeah.
Um, or even marketing firms who want to design a project for Appalachia, whatever it is. I don't actually know that an LFPP has been used that way, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
They could say, we're going to do a planning grant and we're going to impact 4,000 farmers, and that's going to score higher, right? Than
Yeah.
Jane, who wants to raise goats to make goat jerky, but they have to be raised a certain way. That's my go to scenario that will never happen. So I don't put, I've helped individual farmers prepare stuff over the years, so I try not to give their stuff away.
Yeah.
All right. All right, well, this is my favorite because I used to know it really, really well, and because it goes directly to farmers. Some of the key features about this are that it has to be expanding their business and making them more money. So they have to have a business plan so that we're not setting anyone up for failure. Um, it has in the past rewarded things like groups of farmers working together, whether that's a cooperative or someone else, but you have to be raising the product or have the rights to harvest the product. And that goes to fish and forestry, right? Because it doesn't, value added producer grant doesn't have to be food. The other two have been about food. This could be fiber. I've actually seen successful ones in the state for fiber, specifically wool, organic wool, dyed with organic indigo. You could probably look that one up pretty quickly. But and it was awarded, so nobody's information's being. But the key to this one is that the reason this is hard, and if you're looking to change anything about legislation for these, it would be to create a mechanism where this isn't so you're like, oh my God, a farmer could get $200,000, right? That's amazing. This is a reimbursement based grant, which creates a big barrier for a lot of farmers. Let's say it's $200,000 over 2 years, 3 years is the max. So then you're looking at putting out about 25K a quarter, right? If all things being equal, and it's a dollar for dollar match. So you're spending $50,000 in some manner and you're going to get 25 back. That is a really hard sell for small farms.
Yeah.
The legislation is written in such a way that if you can demonstrate the value of the raw commodity, or if you were making milk into cheese, milk, you could actually use that as match, and you could also use some of your own labor as match, in-kind labor as match. So you can do things to help, but those don't score as well because they want to see quote unquote skin in the game, right? So we've seen a lot of success with Kentucky farms using this and applying for this over the years. If you're interested in it, please reach out. I know people who are very good at helping you get a business plan and grant application together for this. It will likely release in the spring of 2026, I think. I don't know. The federal system's kind of wonky right now on the grant schedule. But that's one of those things. And you know what's really interesting that I didn't learn for a long time is that I just said cooperatives were eligible. That means that Organic Valley, Ocean Spray Cranberries, Cabot Creamery. If you want to know, like, and this program is something that politicians can really be like, look what we're doing for small farms and job development in our region, right? So this is one that stays.
Mhm.
They have, it was one of the first ones to get reopened to be able to reimburse people during the earlier part of this year when things were frozen because it affects literally individual farmers. So, um, I prepared
Yeah.
this from the farm, Ford Water Strat. Yeah, I worked with Ford on both of his value producer grants. But, you know, he's somebody that we saw, and that's a quote from K Card where I used to work. You know, he's somebody that, you know, saw an opportunity to expand the organic market, the market for his organic products, and he used the value added producer grant to upgrade software, have more people to deal with delivery and marketing and all those things. So it's not like you're like, I've grown more vegetables. People arrive to buy it. Once you're like, it's not really how it always works. So you do have to, especially doing a CSA, get out there and market it. This, you know, the high tunnels, I actually worked with Jeff and Sue back in the day to get their first high tunnel. It's been a long time now. And they worked with Garapalacha to help put up the high tunnels. They've been amazing. But you know, the high tunnel is part of an NRCS program through Equip, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But it allowed them, you know, I don't know, saw our farm to school partner in Louisiana. Well, not you're not actually our partner, but I consider you a partner because you're doing farm to school. Reach out if you're a partner. We need high tunnels to do a true year-round farm to school here, and I know that Jeff has actually been able to sell lettuce into schools. Jeff and Sue have been able to sell lettuce into schools because they're high tunnel. And my favorite quote from Jeff is that I think it was Jeff when, you know, he had a high time, it froze too hard, like just lost his lettuce or something along those lines. And the food service director reached out and said, the kids want to know when the lettuce that tastes good will come back. They want to know. So REAP is actually, so we're going to talk about a lot of things, but this is actually through the Farm Service Agency, and REAP is the Rural Energy for America program. And it does allow people to install solar or other energy improvements. It can allow people to upgrade a poultry barn, anything that's going to save energy. So that's what those are. And Mountain Association has helped many people fill those out in Kentucky. Local food infrastructure. All right, let's go. I love this stuff. Um, so it says support for processing, aggregation, distribution, and cooperative development. I know quite a bit about these pieces. The Rural Cooperative Development Grant, if anybody here in Kentucky is wanting a business plan or not just for co-op but for their farm, you can go to the Kentucky Center for Ag and Rural Development, and thanks to the Rural Cooperative Development Grant and money from the Kentucky Ag Development Board, you can get a business plan, a personalized business plan for free. They'll even make these things called pro forma financials with a balance sheet that balances, and they can help point you in the direction of loans and grants. Business and industry guaranteed loans, those are also through rural development. And those are really when you're doing a larger project. And we see these if we're trying to prepare sites for aggregation and distribution. Communities, facilities, direct loans and grants. I've not seen them as much used with ag, but they can be. The Rural Business Development Grant, that is the one that we have managed in Kentucky because they require a match and it runs through USDA Rural Development. We have managed to use that to build, at this point, dozens of farmers market pavilions. We've also used it to help support community commercial kitchens. And what those are, what the USDA does realize is that one way to create jobs rurally is farms. And and these businesses, these do that. The Rural Micro Entrepreneur Assistance Program, I have not used that as much. We don't see it used as much in Kentucky. A lot of times that's our loan systems. An ATRA, or Appropriate Technology Transfer for Rural Areas Program. We do have folks that are in CAT a lot of times is using that. And we actually have some recipients here in Berea. And I already mentioned the examples. So farmers market pavilions and commercial kitchens. That's where a lot of this goes. I am gonna go too long if you let me talk about all of these. Yeah, it's I skipped you. This is why people make me slides. I don't know. So when you're part, because my brain goes on. So Kentucky is unique in the way that we're able to support farm bill programs because of what we did with our tobacco buyout money. It says right there, partnering these funds with Kentucky Ag Development Funds has helped many communities build permanent farmers market infrastructures. It even helped get so if you don't know, so here's how all these things, if you're thinking about it, here's how all these things work together. So now you've built you're going to use Ag Development Board money, which, by the way, is taxes collected from people smoking. So the irony of all of this is really not lost on me. And the Kentucky legislature, fortunately, continues to reinvest it, at least half of it, in agriculture. So, and then you have, so we're using in Kentucky, we're using that to help match some of the federal money that's pulled down. And it really has, quite frankly, I think, given us an advantage. And if you look at things like, not only did we manage to get, Perry County, Hazard, Kentucky, be able to get a farmer's market pavilion, but I don't know if y'all have ever tried to run a SNAP or an EBT machine without Wi-Fi or internet. It doesn't work, right? You can't run your credit card. You can't do your Venmo at a farmer's market if there's no Wi-Fi. So getting that Wi-Fi downtown actually allows people to use their SNAP. It allows people to use their credit card at the farmer's market. It allows, better marketing at the farmer's market. And now there's a place for it. At the same time, maybe there's somebody there who's selling cheese, although I don't think Wildcat Mountain goes there anymore. But what I'm saying, like, this is all interconnected of how you get to a 400% increase in direct marketed local food.
And we need broadband internet and Wi-Fi and so many other places to expand things like
We
this.
so do. I will refrain from commenting on a 5-year planning thing to try to get broadband across the nation because I have opinions. So producer support. A lot of this so far has been around like, this is how we're creating the infrastructure for producers, accept the value of producer grant. And it all says, but not to help them with production, right? We're not going to buy them a tractor. We're not going to help them with inputs. We're not going to help them build a fence. They don't get a high tunnel, whatever, unless it's a loan. FSA has loan. We're not going to insure their crops, none of this, right? So, credit and loan programs, technical assistance, food safety education, beginning farmer and rancher development is a program that is not featured on here. Historically underserved has been historically a way that we have helped beginning farmers through the Farm Bill. We'll see what the next iteration looks like. So one thing that was really hard to do, if you all were in a classroom, I would ask to raise hands for how many people thought crop insurance was just for soybeans and corn. Because in Kentucky, that's what everyone thinks. Well, there have been some people who've spent a lot of time and effort. Now, I'm not one of them. I just loved the result of what they did working for whole farm revenue protection policies. You could take out, I have less than an acre lot. If I had an FSA number and a production history and was filing my sales records and my production records with the FSA, I could take out a whole farm revenue protection policy on my 0.87 acre property if I had a history of sales and production. And it's really for that, and it's based upon revenue, not production. Many people are familiar with NAP. which is non-insurable things like, oh, well, I can't insure cantaloupes in my county. I can only insure soybeans through multi-peril crop insurance, MPCI. Everybody can just tune me out for a moment on that. But this actually, if we've only had about 10 farmers in Kentucky take advantage of it, you know how the federal government subsidizes soybean crop insurance. They will subsidize small farm insurance too. Here's the kicker. You have to report your stuff on your taxes because they base losses off of your taxes. So I actually have had farmers use this. And so, for example, an organic farmer, rather than it being like, well, the FSA going price for pumpkins is 24 cents a pound on the wholesale market at, commodity terminal prices, they go based off of, you know, farmer Greg got, he sells organic jack-o'-lanterns and or organic pie pumpkins. Maybe that sounds better. Organic pie pumpkins, and but he wasn't able to make as much money off pie pumpkins this year. And it doesn't necessarily matter why, as long as why isn't neglect. Like I just gave up and rode my four-wheeler through the pumpkin patch. Well, tractor in pumpkin case. But whether it was market failure or let's say Whole Foods says, I want all your organic pie pumpkins, and then they're like, nope, never mind. That is actually a reason to have a decrease in revenue. So this protects small diversified farmers. They have a micro farm policy, which is up to $350,000 in revenue. We have an insurance agent in Kentucky because you have to be an authorized insurance provider. It has been, it's so strange. I'm sure for someone, this was a really big fight to get it passed to help support small diversified farmers. Now it's a fight to get small diversified farmers to actually take this out so that if something terrible does happen, if, I don't know, COVID happens, all the restaurants closed and all your sales to restaurants, this would have helped you.
Right.
And so I've seen farmers get like $50,000 of coverage for $350 and up to 80%. So like, let's say you were planning on 50,000 in sales, which is about the least that I would take out a policy for, depending on your income and all that. By the way, the insurance agents, if they tell you this isn't a real thing, call me. I will tell you who to call. So, because we've had this happen, it is a real thing, and they should all tell you that. But not most insurance agents are comfortable with soybeans, not taxes. All right, because this is going to involve your tax documents. But the federal government's got your tax documents anyway. So anyway, if let's say you were planning on selling those $50,000 of organic pie pumpkins to Whole Foods. Let's say Whole Foods doesn't buy, they only, like, instead of buying $50,000 and you insured 80%, they were going to buy $50,000 for the pie pumpkins, and now they only bought 25. At 80%, that means you were insured up to $40,000. That insurance policy would make up the difference for you between 25 and 40, which is $15,000. If you're interested in ever taking advantage of this, visit your FSA office, talk to the people at the Kentucky Horticulture Council. Dakota, it's amazing. He knows about it. We learned about it together. And let me know if you run into problems, because I will advocate for you, because this is federally subsidized. All right, so that's my rant on small farm insurance. NRCS programs are probably the single most utilized individual support program that we have in the state, and probably besides crop insurance. Not that crop insurance. I forgot to change the NRCS program. So it's more than just conservation programs. Most of what we have, most people in our state will use EQIP and CSP, which is Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and the Conservation Stewardship Program. EQIP is the one that is best known because it's famous for things like high tunnels and rotational fences for rotational grazing. Those are everyone's perennial favorites for EQIP, and for good reason. If you are able to help control the environment in which your plants grow, which you can't, heat a high tunnel until it's out from under hot contract, but you can put some more row covers. You put some little caterpillar row covers inside a high tunnel. It has to be grown in soil because it's lots of things. But this has allowed there's hundreds of high tunnels in southeastern Kentucky, hundreds. I don't know if there's thousands. I haven't pulled the numbers recently. Um, there would maybe be 10 if it weren't for this program. And the reason that's important is because we do increasingly need to control for Kentucky's weather. If you grew tomatoes this year, beyond a few dozen, if you grew hundreds of tomatoes this year in Kentucky's weather and you didn't have them in a high tunnel, you were facing an uphill production battle. Because they're just not, it was too hot, but then wet, and then it was terrible for quality tomato production unless you had some ability to control the environment. Like, I'm not talking we're heating it, we're cooling it. I'm talking like a little bit less rain, not quite as hot, shade, like there's lots of things you can do and extend the season a certain way. So the reason for these, and actually high tunnels, Kentucky was one of the last states to take high tunnels. But they're really to reduce soil, water, habitat erosion. It's a cost share we call it a cost share now with NRCS. Conservation Stewardship Program. A lot of folks who have pieces of their farm that have done slow improvements to do conservation things are now able to, like, by keeping that level, it's not to do new things, it's like to say, like, we're going to keep your farm this nice over here. And that's what the conservation stewardship is for. So why is this helping individual farmers? Why is soil conservation or any conservation helping? Because if you're reducing, I don't think I fully thought about this until I thought about cattle waterers and feed pads. Okay, if you have, because we're talking about nutrient loss and weight gain, if you're talking about cattle. One, you're losing nutrients if your soil is eroding, and that costs you money to put back. And two, on the weight gain, if you have cattle wandering around in muddy fields, they do not gain as fast as cattle who are able to not wander around muddy fields. So if you're feeding on a feeding pad, you're reducing the amount of mud. And rotational grazing, it's just you're reducing inputs, you're reducing erosion, all those kind of things, potentially reducing parasite load if you're doing sheep or something. So this decreases cost barriers for small farms. And at least 14.2, I think it's more than that, in EQIP alone in Kentucky produces in the last 20 years. And again, both reimbursement programs. This one's interesting. You don't have to show receipts. It's just like, here's how much this many linear feet of fencing costs to put up in Kentucky and North Carolina on average, and you've completed the practice, and so have a check.
Nice. All right.
I don't know if there's anything. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Thank you
So,
for letting me take over for a little while, Kimmie.
no, it's great. And we have, just a little bit left here to kind of talk about. And we wanted to really show you all some program resources for the things that we have talked about today. They're listed here, but we can also send these out. But of course, like Myrisa said, please reach out to CFA. We really try to help not only farmers, but other people who might be working in the same sort of circle, as much resources and information as we possibly can. Of course, the Kentucky Department of Ag could be helpful, Kentucky State University. Myrisa did already mention the Kentucky Hort Council, especially when it comes to the crop insurance. Please reach out to your local extension or your local conservation district. And then we have K-Card, which we have talked about quite a bit through this presentation, and Oak and Grow Appalachia. So now that we've talked about all of those great programs and their impacts and what are all those big numbers look like and their impacts on our local food systems, how can we make sure that those things stay around and that they continue to grow and be funded and make those impacts that we've been talking about today? And so, some federal opportunities that CFA uh, is hoping to provide for our members and our advocates all across Kentucky. So, attending our trainings and webinars, these have been recorded, and we are going to be putting out an advocacy toolkit, which means one of the biggest things you can do is contact your member of Congress. Senator Mitch McConnell is our only congressperson that sits on the Senate Ag Committee, but it never hurts to reach out to all of our Congress people down there in DC, and definitely advocate for a marker bill. So, a marker bill is a piece of legislation that doesn't really have an intention of like passing on its own. It's more of like signaling to an issue that they want to be uh, that they want it to be put into the farm bill because the farm bill is so huge that you can't necessarily go through it line by line. And so the biggest way to signal support is to have many co-sponsors or sponsors to that marker bill. So please contact your, member of Congress to say, please sign on to this marker bill and show support for this issue. CFA and other organizations keep up with those kinds of things, and we do send out um, different action alerts and things like that. I always like to show our map of where your district, your representative district might be. It is a very interesting map and can be confusing sometimes. Now, our senators, Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell, they are the whole state, so that is everybody's senators are the same, but all of our representatives could vary and be different. As far as other resources that you can utilize to try and advocate for farm bill issues, please become a CFA member if you are not. If you are a CFA member, you kind of get like firsthand knowledge. You're the first to know when it comes to certain action alerts or marker bills or movement on the farm bill. Um, but obviously opportunities to tell your story, to tell how you are being impacted by these different farm bill programs. And so being a CFA member is very important. Or if you are familiar with the Kentucky Food Action Network, we are a partner in that, and we also host trainings and other advocacy opportunities for the Farm Bill. Just some quick little facts to hopefully encourage you all to participate in some Farm Bill advocacy with CFA. Since January, we've met with members of Congress 4 times. We've appeared in media at least 3 times. I know Myrisa might have been 3 times solo at least, so maybe more than three. We have collected and shared over 10 stories and quotes from our farmers, and we've had 5 farmers at least meet with members of Congress. Within those meetings, we've had a couple of trips to DC and have held an in-person event on one of our members' farms. And when we say collecting stories and things like that, we like to make little, pictures and show our advocacy in action, having farmers talking to media, going to DC, being not only in traditional media like the Herald Leader newspaper, but also being featured on podcasts or radio or news outlets like that. And if you are a farmer who has been impacted by anything we have talked about today, we would love to hear from you. So please reach out to either me or Myrisa. Our emails are listed there, basically our names at cfaky.org, and we would love to talk with you all a little bit.
As soon as I am beautiful. It's the
And
reason the kids are supposed to open the door. Hey, just real quick. The reason, like, and not just you've been impacted, like, if you look at these policies and you're like, what would it take for me to be able to use that policy on my farm? What would it take to make that more accessible to me? If you have ideas for that, love to hear them. Like, that's might have sounded sarcastic, not sarcastic. Sincerely, love to hear them. I don't farm at this point, so I'm all ears. You know, my
yes,
my my some of my farmers are getting older and grumpier, so I need some. They're like, oh, nothing will ever change. No, let's change some things. Let's change. Look, we at least got them to write like small farms into crop insurance. I mean, what else could happen?
right.
So,
And also definitely want to stress that with CFA, we are a membership based organization. We deeply care about what our members care about and our farmers and what kind of change they would like to see. So please visit our website and check it out. Please reach out to us with whatever information you might have, or story, or quote, or suggestions um, going forward and become a CFA member. And thank you all so much. And we have like a couple of minutes if you all have any questions. We would love to be able to answer anything that you all might have questions about. I always like to say, when there's no questions, we must have done everything perfectly. Oh, yes, Letitia.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. When would you suggest that we should start on the application for the value added grant? Because that sucker is um,
Pretty big.
overwhelming.
so Letitia, on that one, I suggest you start on the application any day. The reason being, if you're going to have someone write a third party business plan, I think they've changed the requirement on that. So, one, they've changed the entire system for how you apply for that grant, but the scoring system's still mostly the same. So, I would reach out by the 3rd of January to to the group that can help you. Um, because the good thing is that application is mostly going to be pulled from your business plan. The piece that you need to start on immediately is getting this is part of the reason that this is hard for individual farmers to do, is because you have to have your sam.gov um, registration complete. Kimmie's like, what? Yeah,
I know.
you have to.
Oh, so
They
much.
have to complete the exact same things that CFA completes to get our federal grants, right? So getting things squared away, and being able to get what's called your UEI, which is unique entity identifier. There are some resources. Somebody's video from several years ago on how to go through sam.gov is still up on KCARD's YouTube. I feel like that would be a good place to start, because you could last minute a lot of things you can't last minute the sam.gov registration.
And this is true. I confirm, affirm all the things because that process just I just wanted to be like, yeah, I give up. I'm not I even give up. I want to slap whoever created this system and then give up because it was something. And I did have K Card help me with that, and I do have a UEI, so I'm a little bit ahead of the game. But I and you do have to renew that sucker, right? So like
You
just staying
do,
on
you
top of
do.
all the renewing and you know, and when you're a single business owner, compared to an organization that has 15, 20 employees or more.
Man, what
It's
would I do
it's
for
just
20?
yeah, it's a challenge. But I attempted to go through it one time, or attempted to apply one time, and it just became too. I mean, it's like a very long application. So I'm trying to plan better. So thank you for answering the question.
Well, hopefully I answer. Like, Letitia, I haven't kept up with it like beyond legislation to know when it's going to release, but I have some friends I can call and get a pretty good estimate on that in rural development.
And the match. So it's just like,
Yeah, I'll help you with the
Oh
match.
yeah, the change in the match threw me out for the LFPP this year. That it went up, and so that, I mean, they really do make an effort to make sure they're giving the resources to who they want to give it to. I tell you.
I mean, my favorite quote of the day is they made the pie bigger, and instead of giving everybody an extra slice, they just made the slices bigger.
yeah.
I mean, that's literally what happened with the LFPP, FMPP programs. So,
Well, are there any other questions? And like we said, I would love for y'all to reach out to us to continue any of these conversations. Um, but yeah, be on the lookout for our advocacy toolkit. Very excited for that. Um, but yeah, always good to see everybody. And with that, we'll let you guys go.
thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.